The scent of old paper and dust was the only perfume I had known for 5 years. It clung to my clothes, my hair, my very skin. A librarian's musk. Or in my case, a bookseller's. I lived in a state of quiet, perpetual melancholy, the kind that settles in your bones like a damp chill you can't quite shake. My life was a loop of stacking books, running the till, and going home to an apartment that was just as silent as my heart. I was an observer, a ghost in my own story, watching the world through the large plate glass window of The Last Page, a name that was about to become painfully literal. For months, my observations had centered on one person, Julian. He was a recent hire, brought on for what our boss, Mr. Miller, called heavy lifting and inventory management. It was a delicate way of saying he was here to do the things my slender frame and Mr. Miller's bad back could not. He was quiet, not shy, just economical with his words. He moved with a deliberate grace that seemed at odds with his solid build, shelving boxes of hardcovers with a fluid motion that I found myself watching more often than I cared to admit. He was the catalyst, though I didn't know it at first. His arrival had unsettled the quiet dust of my existence. But the true inciting incident, the event that would shatter the glass of my lonely terrarium, was an email from Mr. Miller. The subject line was simple, brutal. Store closing. The developers had made an offer he couldn't refuse. The Last Page would have its final chapter in 1 month. And just like that, the comfortable, monotonous rhythm of my life had a countdown timer. A deadline. I remembered the day Julian started. He'd walked in, his application a single-page, hand-filled form. Mr. Miller had been desperate. Julian had broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his plain gray t-shirt, and dark hair, cut short and neat. But it was his eyes that had held me. They were a deep, clear brown, and they met mine with a steadiness that felt like an anchor. There was no flicker of judgment, no sizing up, just a calm, unreadable assessment. His voice, when he finally spoke to confirm his start date, was a low, gravelly hum that vibrated through the floorboards. It was a voice that belonged to late nights and whispered secrets, not the bright, dusty air of a bookstore. In that first moment, a single, foolish thought had crossed my mind. Oh, there you are. It was the kind of thought you immediately bury, ashamed of its hopefulness. The final month was a blur of discount signs and sentimental customers. And for me, it was a period of protracted observation, a final chance to memorize the cartography of Julian. I watched him from behind the checkout counter, my chin propped on my hand, pretending to read. I watched the way his brow furrowed in concentration when he was cross-referencing an invoice, the small muscle that ticked in his jaw. I watched him deal with difficult customers, his patience a placid lake. He never raised his voice. He would just stand there, a solid, unmovable presence, until their frustration simply dissipated against his calm. He had a habit of pushing his hair back from his forehead with the heel of his hand when he was thinking. I saw him do it a dozen times a day. The gesture was so mundane, so unconscious, yet it felt intensely personal, a glimpse into the machinery of his mind. He smelled of clean laundry, a faint, sharp scent of cedar from his soap, and the ever-present bookstore dust we all wore. Sometimes, when he passed behind the counter to get to the stockroom, the scent would linger in the air, a ghost of his presence that made my chest ache with a nameless yearning. I catalogued his smiles. They were rare, and therefore, precious. There was the small, almost imperceptible twitch of his lips when a child found a book they loved. There was a slightly wider, more genuine curve when Mr. Miller told one of his terrible jokes. And once, there was a full, unrestrained grin that had been directed, impossibly, at me. I had been trying to retrieve a book from a high shelf, precariously balanced on the rolling ladder, and had nearly toppled over. He had been there in an instant, his hands steadying the ladder, his face tilted up at me. "Careful, Leo," he'd said, and the grin that followed wasn't mocking. It was warm. It was concerned. It lit up his entire face, crinkling the corners of his steady eyes. My heart had hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I'd mumbled a thank you and scurried down, my face burning. For the rest of the day, I replayed the moment. Careful, Leo. He'd used my name. It sounded different in his low voice. Solid. Real. It wasn't just the polite, customer service tone I was used to. It was something else. Something I was too afraid to name. My internal analysis went into overdrive. Every interaction became a text to be deconstructed, a puzzle to be solved. If he said, "Good morning," I would spend the next hour wondering about the inflection. Was it purely polite, or was there a hint of warmth there I hadn't heard before? When he handed me a pen, did his fingers brush against mine intentionally? The logical part of my brain told me I was being ridiculous, that I was projecting my own desperate loneliness onto a man who was simply my coworker. But the other part of me, the hopeful, foolish part, clung to these tiny moments like a lifeline. He had a way of looking at me. It wasn't a stare. It was a gaze. Often, I would be reshelving a section, lost in the familiar, methodical task, and I'd feel it, the weight of his attention. When I'd look up, he would be across the store, seemingly busy with a box of new arrivals, but his eyes would be on me. He would hold my gaze for a second too long, his expression unreadable, before looking away. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't predatory. It was watchful, as if he were trying to figure me out, too. What did he see? A skinny, anxious man who hid behind books and sarcasm? Or did he see the loneliness I tried so hard to conceal? The touches began subtly. So subtly, in fact, that at first, I was sure I was imagining them. The first time, we were in the cramped back office. I was trying to fix the jammed printer, my frustration mounting. He came in to grab his coat and paused behind me. "Here," he said, his voice close to my ear. He reached around me, his arm brushing against my back, his chest a wall of warmth just inches away. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The scent of cedar and soap filled my senses. He fiddled with the paper tray for a moment, his large, capable hands easily dislodging the crumpled sheet. "It sticks sometimes," he murmured, his breath stirring the fine hairs on my neck. He pulled back, and the absence of his warmth was a sudden, sharp cold. I managed a choked, "Thanks," without turning around, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Was that intentional? The proximity? The way he had leaned in so close when there was, technically, enough room to have kept a more professional distance? My mind spun, dissecting every second of the encounter. The brush of his arm, the heat of his body, the low timbre of his voice. It was a masterpiece of ambiguity. Plausible deniability. He was just being helpful. Of course he was. A week later, it happened again. We were closing up, and a sudden downpour had started outside. I didn't have an umbrella. I was peering out the front door, contemplating a mad dash to the bus stop. "I can give you a ride," a low voice said from behind me. It was Julian, shrugging on a worn leather jacket that I'd never seen before. It made his shoulders look even broader. "I drove today." "Oh, no, you don't have to," I stammered, my social anxiety flaring. "The bus stop is just around the corner. It's pouring, Leo," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Come on." He held the door open, a gesture that was both polite and commanding. I followed him out into the rain-slicked street, the neon sale sign reflecting in the puddles. His truck was old, a bit beat up, but clean on the inside. It smelled like him. Cedar and something else, something metallic and clean, like tools. The space felt incredibly small, intimate. Our knees brushed as I fumbled with the seatbelt. A jolt, electric and sharp, shot up my leg. I flinched, pulling my knee away. "Sorry," I mumbled, my face hot. "Don't be," he said, his voice quiet as he started the engine. He didn't move his leg. He just left it there, a hair's breadth from mine. The entire ride to my apartment was a study in tension. I was hyper-aware of the small space between us, of the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers, of the sound of his breathing. We didn't talk much. I gave him directions, and he just nodded, his focus on the wet road. When he pulled up to my building, I practically bolted out of the car. "Thanks again." I called over my shoulder, not waiting for a reply. I felt like a coward. I also felt like I was vibrating. That night, I lay in bed, replaying the knee brush. It was nothing. An accident. A consequence of a small truck cab. But it felt like everything. It felt like a question he had asked without words. A question I was too terrified to answer. The final week arrived, a somber cloud hanging over the store. The shelves were beginning to look skeletal, picked clean by bargain hunters. The familiar comfort of the place was being stripped away, revealing the bare, dusty bones beneath. Mr. Miller, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him, announced that the last 2 days would be for final packing. He'd pay us for our time. He couldn't bear to do it himself. Which led to tonight. The final night. The end of everything. Mr. Miller had left us a few hours ago, his eyes suspiciously bright. He'd shaken our hands, pressed an extra $50 into each, and told us to lock up when you're done. He'd ordered pizza for us, a sad, greasy piece offering sitting on the checkout counter. And now, it was just me and Julian, alone in the echoing carcass of the bookstore. The task ahead was monumental. Every remaining book had to be boxed, labeled for donation. The shelves had to be wiped down, the furniture consolidated for the movers. It was a job for a team of people, not two guys in a stack of collapsing cardboard boxes. The shared experience, this final, funereal task, broke down the last of our professional barriers. We couldn't rely on the comfortable silence of our usual routines. We had to communicate, to coordinate. You start on fiction, I'll take history, I suggested, trying to sound more capable than I felt. Sounds good. Julian nodded, already rolling up the sleeves of his dark Henley, revealing strong forearms dusted with dark hair. I quickly looked away, focusing on the stack of boxes. We worked in a strange rhythm, a mix of silence and sporadic, necessary conversation. Need more tape? Where are the markers? Can you grab that top shelf? The vast, empty space made our voices sound small. After an hour, my back was already aching. I was clumsy with the packing tape, my fingers fumbling with the dispenser. I saw Julian watching me as I struggled to seal a particularly overstuffed box. He didn't say anything, just walked over, took the tape gun from my hands, and sealed the box with 3 clean, efficient motions. He handed it back to me, his fingers brushing mine. This time, the touch lingered. It wasn't a fleeting brush. His thumb gently grazed over my knuckles before he pulled away. My breath hitched. I looked up at him. His eyes were dark in the dimming light of the store, his expression serious. "Let me do the taping," he said, his voice low. "You're better at organizing the boxes." It wasn't a criticism. It was a simple statement of fact, a gentle reallocation of tasks. He was taking care of me. The thought was so unexpected, so overwhelmingly tender, that I could only nod, my throat suddenly tight. As we worked, a kind of comfortable quiet settled between us. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by the shared goal. We fell into a rhythm. I would fill a box, he would tape it shut and stack it. We were a team. Around 9 o'clock, he stopped. "We should eat," he said, gesturing to the pizza boxes. We sat on the floor, our backs against a row of empty shelves, the pizza boxes balanced. "So," Julian said, after we'd eaten a few slices in silence. "What's next for you, Leo?" The question was so direct, so personal, it caught me off guard. No one ever asked me about my future. My life was a series of present moments, with no forward momentum. "I don't know," I admitted, picking at the crust of my pizza. "Look for another bookstore, I guess. It's all I know how to do." "You're good at it," he said simply. "You know where every single book is. You know what people will like before they do." I was stunned. He'd noticed. He'd paid that much attention. I like it," I mumbled, feeling my face grow warm. "It's quiet," he nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. He was looking at me with that same steady, intense gaze, but this time, it felt different. It felt like he was genuinely seeing me. "I get that," he said. "I'm not much for noise myself." This was it. A moment of softness. A crack in the stoic facade. He was admitting something about himself, creating a bridge between us. "What about you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What will you do?" He took a slow bite of pizza, chewing thoughtfully before he answered. "I'm not sure," he said. "This was just a temporary thing. My sister's kid was sick, and they needed help with medical bills. I've been saving up to buy a small piece of land, maybe an hour or 2 out of the city. Build a cabin. Something small. Quiet, a cabin." The image was so vivid, so perfectly him. A small wooden house surrounded by trees, with a curl of smoke rising from the chimney. A place of solitude and self-sufficiency. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. "Wow," I breathed. "That sounds amazing." "It's a lot of work," he said, with a small, self-deprecating shrug. "But it's honest work." He looked down at his hands, calloused and capable. Then he looked back at me, and his eyes held a surprising vulnerability. "Do you ever think about getting out of the city? Finding somewhere quiet?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. It wasn't just a question about geography. He was asking if I ever wanted a different life. A life away from the noise and the anonymity. A life like the one he was dreaming of. My heart is pounding. This is no longer about my internal monologue. This is a real conversation, a real connection unfolding in the sterile, hollowed-out shell of our workplace. I look at him, at the earnest and open expression on his face, a look I have never seen there before. I am no longer just an observer. I am a participant. All the time, I confess, the words coming out in a rush of honesty. I dream about it. A place where you can actually see the stars, where the only sound is the wind in the trees. I stop, embarrassed by my sudden poetic outburst. Sorry, that's cheesy. No, he says, his voice firm. He leans forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. It's not cheesy, and in that moment, the entire dynamic shifts. The line between coworker and something more dissolves. We are just two people, sitting on a dusty floor, sharing a dream of a quieter world. The air between us is thick with possibility, charged and humming like the fluorescent lights above. The pizza is forgotten. The boxes are forgotten. There is only the space between us, shrinking with every shared glance, every quiet admission. We finished the rest of the packing in a new kind of silence. It was no longer awkward or purely functional. It was a shared, comfortable quiet, laden with the weight of our conversation. Every time we passed each other in the aisles, every time our hands brushed as we moved a box, the contact sizzled. The air was electric. I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for a storm to break. Finally, it was done. The last box was taped and stacked. The shelves were wiped clean, standing like naked skeletons in the cavernous space. The only things left were the checkout counter, a single desk chair, and a trash can full of pizza crusts and wadded-up paper towels. It was almost 2 a.m. Exhaustion was a heavy cloak on my shoulders, but my mind was wide awake, buzzing with adrenaline and a terrifying hope. Well, I said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. I guess that's it. This is it. The end of the road. In a few moments, we would lock the door for the last time, and he would drive away, and the fragile, nascent connection between us would likely evaporate in the morning light. The thought sent a spike of panic through my chest. Yeah, he said, his voice a low rumble. He was standing by the front door, looking out at the empty, sleeping street. This is it. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, my movements stiff and clumsy. I had to get out of there before I did something stupid, like beg him not to go, like ask him to take me to his cabin in the woods. I should go. The buses are probably done for the night. I'll have to get a cab. I'll drive you, he said, turning from the window. It wasn't a question. You don't have to, I started to say, the automatic, self-effacing script kicking in. Leo, he said, and the way he said my name cut through my anxiety. It was soft but firm, a command. I'll drive you. I just nodded, unable to speak. I walked towards the back, towards the employee bathroom, to splash some water on my face, to try and get a grip. As I passed the main breaker panel near the stockroom door, my hand hovered over it. All that was left was to kill the lights and lock the door forever. My heart ached. This place, for all its quiet monotony, had been my sanctuary. I came back out to the main floor to find Julian hadn't moved. He was just watching me, his hands in his pockets, his expression once again unreadable. The tipping point was here. The air was so thick with unspoken tension I could taste it. It tasted like dust and ozone. I walked over to the checkout counter to grab my phone, my hands trembling slightly. Ready? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. He just looked around the empty store, a slow, sweeping gaze that seemed to take in every empty shelf, every shadow. Almost, he said, his voice quiet. He pushed off from the doorframe and started walking towards me. My heart started to pound. He wasn't walking towards the door. He was walking towards the back of the store. He stopped at the main light switch panel on the far wall, the one we always used at closing. You missed a spot, he said, his voice a low murmur that sent a shiver down my spine. I frowned, confused. What? I wiped everything down. He didn't look at me. He just reached out and, with a series of decisive clicks, switched off the humming overhead fluorescent lights. The store was plunged into a sudden, deep twilight. The only illumination came from the single, small desk lamp I'd left on at the counter and the pale, ghostly glow of the streetlights filtering through the front window. The transformation was instantaneous. The store was no longer a hollowed-out commercial space. It was a cavern of shadows, intimate and secret. My breath caught in my chest. I couldn't move. He stood there for a moment, a tall silhouette against the faint light, before he turned. He started walking back towards me, his footsteps slow, deliberate, echoing softly in the vast quiet. He didn't stop until he was standing directly in front of me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I had to tilt my head back to look up at him. My heart is a frantic drum against my ribs. I can't breathe. I can't think. There is only the darkness, the scent of him, cedar and clean sweat, and the faintest trace of cardboard, and the overwhelming reality of his presence. His eyes are dark pools of shadow, but I can feel the intensity of his gaze on me, a physical weight. He lifts a hand, and I flinch, expecting. I don't know what, but his touch is impossibly gentle. He places his hand on my shoulder, his thumb stroking the side of my neck, right over my frantic pulse. I wasn't just staying to help clean, he says, his voice a gravelly whisper that seems to vibrate through my entire body. And then, he uses his hand on my shoulder to turn me around. Gently, but with an undeniable purpose. I am facing away from him now, looking out at the empty, darkened shelves, my own faint reflection staring back at me from the glass of the front door. My mind is white noise. What is he doing? I feel his other hand come to rest on my other shoulder. He is standing directly behind me, his front flush against my back. I can feel the solid wall of his chest, the buckle of his belt pressing into my lower back. I gasp a small, choked sound. His hands tighten on my shoulders, holding me in place. He lowers his head, his chin brushing against the top of my hair. I can feel his breath, warm and steady, against my ear. For months, Leo, he murmurs, his voice a deep vibration that travels from his chest into my back, resonating through my bones. For months, I've been watching you. The confession, so close to my own secret reality, shatters my composure. A tremor runs through me. I watched you hide behind these books, he continues, his voice low and intimate, meant only for me. I watched you build walls around yourself, so high no one could get in. His hands slide from my shoulders down my arms, his fingers wrapping around my biceps, holding me firm. I watched you, and I wondered what it would take to make you look at me. Really look at me. He turns me again, slowly, deliberately, until I am facing him once more. His hands slide from my arms to my waist, holding me there. We are inches apart. In the dim, holy light of the abandoned bookstore, I can finally see his expression. The unreadable mask is gone. In its place is a raw, aching vulnerability that mirrors my own. His eyes are full of a desperate, patient hunger. This, he whispers, his gaze dropping to my lips. I think this is what it takes. He leans in, and the world narrows to this single point in time. There is no more past, no more future. There is only now. His lips meet mine, and it is not a tentative, questioning touch. It is a declaration. It is firm and sure, and full of a certainty I have never known. It is not rushed. It is a slow, deliberate claiming. The kiss is everything. It is the relief of a breath held too long. It is the answer to a question I was too afraid to even ask. His lips are soft, warm, and they taste of coffee and something uniquely, intoxicatingly Julian. I make a small sound in the back of my throat, a sigh of surrender, and my hands, which had been hanging uselessly at my sides, come up to rest on his chest. I can feel the steady, powerful beat of his heart under my palm. It is as frantic as my own. He deepens the kiss, one hand sliding from my waist up my back, pulling me closer until there is no space left between us. His other hand comes up to cup my jaw, his thumb stroking my cheek. It is an anchor in the dizzying, overwhelming flood of sensation. This is not a fantasy. This is not a dream. This is real. Julian is kissing me. In the ruins of the only home I have ever known, he is kissing me. He is real, and he is here, and he wants me. A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washes over me, so potent it makes my knees weak. He feels it, his arm tightening around my back, holding me up. He breaks the kiss, but only to rest his forehead against mine. We stand there, breathing the same air, our chests rising and falling in unison. My eyes are closed, but I can feel his gaze on me. Leo, he breathes, his voice thick. I open my eyes. In the near darkness, his face is a landscape of shadows and soft light. The hunger is still there in his eyes, but it's tempered now with a softness, a tenderness that makes my throat ache. Hi. I whisper, the stupidest, most inadequate word I can think of. A shaky, watery laugh escapes me. A slow smile spreads across his face. It's not the small, rare smile I'm used to. This one is wide and real, and it transforms him. "Hi," he says back, his voice full of a warmth that melts the last of the ice around my heart. The silence that follows is thick with the aftermath. The kiss hangs in the air between us, a tangible thing. He doesn't let go of me, and I don't move away. We just stand there, wrapped in the shadows and the quiet, his forehead pressed to mine. But as the seconds stretch into a minute, the initial euphoria begins to curdle. My anxiety, that old, familiar companion, starts to whisper its poison. What now? The thought is a cold splash of water. The moment was perfect, a cinematic climax. But movies end. What happens after the credits roll? The bookstore is still closing. We are still, for all intents and purposes, unemployed strangers who just shared a desperate, world-altering kiss in the dark. My mind starts to spin, the familiar spiral of overthinking and self-doubt. He must regret it. It was the heat of the moment, the finality of the night, the exhaustion. A temporary madness. Any second now, he's going to pull away, run a hand through his hair, and mumble an apology. The thought is so painful I can barely breathe. I must have tensed up, because he pulls back slightly, just enough to look at my face. His smile is gone, replaced by a flicker of concern. His brow furrows. "You okay?" he asks, his voice low and searching. I can't meet his eyes. I look down at his chest, at my own pale, trembling hand resting over his heart. Yes, I lie, my voice thin. Just tired. It's a weak excuse, and we both know it. The silence stretches, and this time it's not comfortable. It's awkward and charged with my fear. He's going to leave. He's going to say he made a mistake. I brace myself for the impact, for the familiar sting of rejection. But it doesn't come. Instead, he does something that completely disarms me. He takes my hand, the one on his chest, and laces his fingers through mine. His grip is warm and firm. He lifts our joined hands and brings my knuckles to his lips, pressing a soft, lingering kiss there. My eyes snap up to his. "I've wanted to do that for months," he says, his voice quiet but utterly firm. There is no doubt in it. No regret. Ever since that day you nearly fell off the ladder. The reassurance is a balm on my frayed nerves. The tension in my shoulders eases, the knot of anxiety in my stomach loosening its grip. He doesn't regret it. He's been feeling this, too. All those lingering looks, the accidental touches, they were real. It wasn't just my lonely imagination. The mutual pining was, in fact, mutual. You have. I stammer, feeling like a fool. A small, wry smile touches his lips. Was I not obvious enough? He teases gently. I thought driving you home and practically sitting in your lap might have been a clue. A blush creeps up my neck. I thought you just had a small truck. I admit, my voice barely a whisper. He lets out a low chuckle, a rich, warm sound that reverberates through me. I do have a small truck, he says. But not that small. He squeezes my hand. Leo, I'm not good with words. I never have been. I'm better with this. He gestures with our joined hands, encompassing the kiss, the closeness, the entire charged atmosphere between us. But I need you to know this isn't. It's not just a heat-of-the-moment thing for me. This is real. His honesty is a physical blow, in the best possible way. It knocks the last of the air from my lungs. Me too. I manage to say, the words thick with emotion. It's real for me, too. Relief floods his face, a visible wave. It occurs to me then that he was nervous, too. This confident, steady man was just as afraid of rejection as I was. The realization is humanizing, endearing. It makes him seem less like a fantasy and more like a person who is holding my hand in the dark. But then, the reality of our situation returns, a lingering chill. The test. But what now? I ask, the question I was so afraid of a moment ago. The store. It's gone. This was our context. What are we outside of this place? He doesn't let go of my hand. His expression grows serious again. I know, he says. He looks around the dark, empty space. This place is where I got to see you every day. I was dreading this night, not just because the job was ending, but because I was afraid I'd lose the chance. He looks back at me, his gaze intense. But we're not just co-workers, Leo. Not anymore. We're something else. We get to figure out what that is now. He's right. The end of the bookstore isn't just an ending. It's a beginning. The loss of our shared context is also a liberation. We are free to define our relationship on our own terms, away from the shelves and the checkout counter. He makes the choice, right then and there. He takes a step back, finally releasing my hand, and the momentary loss of contact makes my skin prickle. He reaches into the back pocket of his jeans and pulls out his wallet. Not for money. He fumbles with it for a second before pulling out a small, slightly worn photograph. He hands it to me. In the dim light, I can just make out the image. It's a picture of a wide-open field, a line of dense trees in the background under a vast, pale sky. There's a small, hand-painted for sale sign sticking out of the overgrown grass. I bought it, he says quietly. The land. I closed on it last week. I stare at the picture, then back up at him. Your cabin, I breathe. Yeah, he says, a hopeful, nervous energy radiating from him. It's about an hour and a half from here. I'm going up this weekend to start clearing some of the brush. 2. Plan things out. He shoves his hands in his pockets, a rare show of nervous energy. Maybe you'd want to come see it? Help me plan. We could. See the stars. He's offering me his dream. He's inviting me into the quiet, beautiful future he's been building for himself. It's not just a date. It's an invitation into his life. The conscious choice. The key to a future I had only allowed myself to imagine in my most private, foolish moments. The hope that blooms in my chest is so powerful it feels like flight. The fear, the anxiety, the years of loneliness, they don't vanish completely, but they recede, their power diminished in the face of this incredible, terrifying, wonderful offer. Yes, I say, and the word is not a whisper. It's clear and steady. I'd love that. The smile he gives me then is the best one yet. It's full of relief and joy and a future I'm suddenly desperate to be a part of. He takes the photograph from my fingers and tucks it back into his wallet. Good, he says softly. Now, let's get out of here. He turns and heads for the front door, and I follow him. He unlocks it, and we step out into the cool night air. The city is quiet at this hour, the streets empty. He locks the door to the last page for the final time, the click of the deadbolt echoing with a sad finality. But as he turns back to me, his face illuminated by the yellow glow of a streetlight, I don't feel sad. There's a diner a few blocks from here, he says. It's open all night. You want to get some coffee? Real coffee, not the sludge Mr. Miller used to make. Yeah, I say, smiling. I'd like that. We start walking, not towards his truck, but down the silent sidewalk towards the diner. After a few steps, his hand finds mine again, his fingers lacing through mine as if it's the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it is. Our footsteps are the only sound, a quiet, steady rhythm on the pavement. We don't talk. We don't need to. The comfortable silence is back, but this time it's not just comfortable. It's intimate. We walk side by side, our hands linked, our shoulders occasionally brushing. This is our new beginning. Not a grand, cinematic moment, but a quiet, simple one. Two people walking to get coffee in the middle of the night. The diner is a pocket of warmth and light in the sleeping city. The smell of frying bacon and old coffee is a welcome change from the dust of the bookstore. We slide into a booth, the red vinyl cracked and worn. He slides in on one side, and I slide in on the other, but it feels too far apart. After a moment's hesitation, I move to his side of the booth. He looks at me, a question in his eyes, and then a soft smile. He shifts over, making room, and drapes his arm over the back of the seat behind me. Our knees touch under the table. This time, I don't pull away. I lean into the touch, into his warmth. A tired-looking waitress comes over, and we order 2 black coffees. When she leaves, Julian turns to me, his arm still resting behind me, his fingers gently playing with the hair at the nape of my neck. The small, absent-minded touch sends shivers of pleasure through me. So, he says, his voice a low, teasing rumble. A cabin in the woods. You think you can handle the quiet? I think about my silent apartment, my lonely life, the years I've spent observing the world from a safe distance. I think about the bone-deep ache of wanting something more, something real. And I look at the man beside me, his steady eyes, his gentle touch, the future he's offering me like a gift. The quiet doesn't scare me anymore. I say, leaning my head back against his arm and looking up at him. I've been waiting for it my whole life. His smile softens. He leans down and presses a soft, sweet kiss to my forehead. It's a kiss of promise, of belonging. The waitress returns with our coffee, and we sit there, sipping it slowly, our hands clasped on the tabletop. We talk. We talk about everything and nothing. About the books we love, the places we've been, the silly, small details that make up a life. I learn that his favorite color is the dark green of a pine forest. He learns that I'm terrified of spiders, but can quote entire passages of poetry from memory. I tell him about my ridiculous, obsessive cataloging of his smiles, and to my surprise, he doesn't laugh at me. He just listens, his expression serious, and then he admits he kept track of the books I recommended to customers, just to know what I liked. We are peeling back the layers, discovering the person underneath the coworker. And with every new revelation, the connection between us deepens, solidifies. The sun is beginning to rise by the time we leave the diner, painting the eastern sky in shades of pale pink and orange. The city is starting to wake up, the first few cars rumbling down the street. He drives me home, and this time, the ride isn't fraught with tension. It's filled with a quiet, happy exhaustion. When he pulls up to my building, he cuts the engine. Neither of us moves to get out. "This weekend, then?" he asks, turning to face me in the small cab. "This weekend," I confirm, my voice full of a certainty that is brand new to me. He leans over and kisses me again. This one is slow and deep, a good morning and a see you later all in one. It's a kiss that tastes like coffee and the promise of a new day. When he pulls away, he rests his hand on my cheek. "Get some sleep, Leo," he says softly. "You too," I reply. I get out of the truck and walk to my apartment door, feeling his eyes on me the whole way. I unlock the door and turn back to give him one last wave. He's still watching me, a small smile on his face. He lifts a hand in return before putting the truck in gear and driving away. I step inside my apartment and close the door. The silence that greets me is different now. It's not the lonely, oppressive silence I'm used to. It's a peaceful silence, full of echoes and anticipation. I walk over to my window and look out at the dawn-streaked sky. For 5 years, I was a ghost in my own life, a passive observer watching from the sidelines. I lived within the safe, dusty confines of a bookstore, surrounded by stories, but never living one of my own. And then Julian came along. He didn't break down my walls. He was just patient. He stood outside them, a quiet, steady presence, and waited. He waited for me to be brave enough to open the door myself. The store is gone, my sanctuary is gone, my old life is over. But I don't feel loss. I don't feel fear. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I feel hope. I feel the exhilarating, terrifying thrill of a new chapter beginning. I am no longer just an observer. I am a participant, and I have a feeling this story, our story, is going to be my favorite one. I feel like I've come home.